Ever get that feeling like you're just missing something in conversations?
Oh, yeah.
Like there's some secret language going on you just don't understand.
Absolutely.
We're going deep today
Okay.
into how to really read people
Awesome.
using psychology
Right.
and behavioral analysis and just being more observant.
Interesting.
Our guide is Patrick King's book, Read People Like a Book.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's full of techniques to analyze people,
Cool.
understand them, even predict what they'll do.
That sounds useful.
It is.
Okay, so what's the big takeaway from the book?
I like how it's more than just tips and tricks.
It goes deeper.
It does.
Okay.
It looks at why people act the way they do,
Interesting.
so we can make better judgments about people.
Oh, I see.
So it's really empowering.
I like that.
Yeah. Whether you're prepping for a job interview
Sure.
or trying to understand your partner
Right.
or just fascinated by people,
Yeah.
it helped you pick up on the subtle cues people give off without even knowing.
I'm intrigued already.
Me too.
Okay, so how do we start?
Well, first,
Yeah.
we need to understand why people do what they do.
Okay.
It sounds simple,
Right.
but King says we jump to conclusions about people too often.
Without really thinking about it. I'm definitely guilty of that.
We all are.
Okay, so what should we do instead?
We need to understand motivation.
Motivation.
Why does someone do something?
Yeah, that makes sense.
King gives a few models for thinking about this.
Like what?
One is the idea of the shadow.
The shadow.
Yeah, it's a Jungian psychology concept.
Interesting.
It's basically the parts of ourselves we hide.
Like our dark side.
Kinda.
Okay.
It's the stuff we don't like about ourselves. The things we deny or repress.
So how does that help us understand other people?
King says we can see someone's shadow in what they criticize in others or what they overemphasize.
You mean like if someone's always complaining about other people being lazy, maybe they're worried about being lazy themselves.
Right.
Interesting.
It's about seeing those projections and understanding the hidden motivations.
I like that.
What other models stood out to you?
Well, there's the inner child.
Oh, yes.
It's that part of us that's still stuck in childhood patterns.
Even as adults.
Yeah.
So like when someone throws a tantrum,
Exactly.
that's their inner child coming out.
Could be.
And when we see that,
Yeah.
we can understand their behavior better
Right.
and react with more patience.
Makes sense.
King also talks about the pleasure pain principle.
Oh, yeah.
We all want pleasure
Of course.
and we avoid pain.
Naturally.
But the thing is,
Yeah.
our ideas about pleasure and pain can be messed up.
Meaning
We make choices that hurt us in the long run.
because they feel good in the moment.
Exactly.
Like the smoker who knows cigarettes are bad but can't resist that nicotine hit.
It's all about perception.
So even if someone's perception is flawed, we can understand them better by understanding what they see as pleasure or pain.
That's right.
Fascinating.
King talks about some other models too.
Oh, yeah.
Like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
basic needs have to be met before higher needs.
Food and shelter before self-actualization.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
So someone struggling to survive
Yeah.
might not be receptive to arguments about,
Okay.
I don't know, personal growth or something.
Because they're focused on survival.
Right.
It's about context.
It is.
Cool.
And then there are ego defense mechanisms.
Those sound intense.
They can be.
Can you explain them a bit?
Basically, they're mental tricks.
Tricks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our minds use to protect our egos
Protect us from what?
from unpleasant realities.
No.
Things like denial,
Right.
rationalization,
Mm-hmm.
projection.
Projection.
Like when someone blames their mistakes on someone else.
Instead of taking responsibility.
Yep.
So they're projecting their own shortcomings onto someone else.
Yes.
To avoid feeling bad about themselves.
That's it.
Interesting.
It's all unconscious.
So we don't even realize we're doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we learn to recognize these mechanisms,
Yeah.
we can understand people's behavior better,
Okay.
even when it seems irrational.
So we've talked about these motivational models.
Right.
But how do we actually see them playing out?
That's where body language comes in.
Oh, yeah.
Our bodies are constantly giving off signals.
And interesting.
They often reveal our true feelings.
Even when our words don't.
Exactly.
I'm ready to learn more.
You do.
Let's dive into that next.
Body language. Beyond words.
Sounds good.
What are some of the key things to understand?
Well, King talks about micro-expressions.
Micro-expressions.
These are tiny facial expressions. They happen really fast.
Okay.
And they show our real emotions.
Even if we're trying to hide them.
Even then.
Wow.
Like imagine someone pretending to be happy, but for a split second you see a flash of anger. That's a micro-expression.
Interesting.
They often go unnoticed.
Because they're so fast.
Right.
But they can be really revealing.
They can walk. They're pacifying behaviors.
Pacifying?
It's what we do to soothe ourselves when we're stressed.
Like what?
Rubbing our necks.
Oh, yeah.
Touching our faces.
Hey, dude.
Fidgeting with our hands.
Right.
These little things show how we really feel.
Even if we're saying everything's fine.
Exactly.
Like our bodies are betraying us.
In a way.
Does King talk about anything else with body language?
He says not to focus on just one gesture.
So like crossed arms don't always mean someone's closed off?
Right.
It's more complicated than that?
It is.
Okay.
We need to look for clusters of behavior.
Clusters.
Like a whole pattern.
What kind of patterns?
Like, is their body open and relaxed?
Showing confidence.
Or closed and tense?
Fear or defensiveness.
Interesting.
And have you noticed
how people mirror each other's gestures?
Oh, yeah.
It can be a sign of liking or agreement.
Wow, I never thought of that.
It's subconscious.
Like we're trying to build rapport.
Exactly.
So this is fascinating. It's like a whole new way of seeing people.
It is.
But we've been talking about body language.
Yeah.
How do we actually understand someone's personality?
King suggests looking at personality frameworks.
Like what?
He talks about the Big Five personality traits.
Oh, I've heard of those.
Openness.
Right.
Conscientiousness. Extroversion. Agreeableness.
Okay.
Neuroticism.
So these traits can help us understand someone's tendencies.
Exactly.
So like a highly conscientious person would probably be very organized.
Right.
While someone high in neuroticism might be more prone to anxiety. It's not about putting people in boxes. It's about having a framework to understand their behavior.
We'll get into that more next time.
That's good.
Back again for more of Read People Like a Book.
I'm ready.
Last time we were talking about personality frameworks.
Yeah, the Big Five traits.
King says not to get too hung up on individual traits.
Right, it's about seeing the whole person.
Exactly.
Are there other frameworks besides the Big Five?
He mentions the Myers-Briggs.
Oh, yes.
And Kiersey temperaments.
Okay.
They offer more detailed personality types.
So more nuances.
Right.
Not just one trait at a time.
They help us see how people interact with the world.
Interesting.
But it's important to remember,
what's that?
These frameworks aren't absolute.
They're just tools.
For understanding people.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's like having a map to guide us.
But we still need to pay attention to the actual terrain.
Good analogy.
What about when we think someone might be lying?
Lie detection.
Is there a way to really know?
King has a whole chapter on that.
Okay.
It's tricky.
Oh, so?
There's no one guaranteed sign.
No Pinocchio knows.
Nope. It's more about analyzing the whole conversation.
What should we look for?
Inconsistencies.
Like what?
Maybe their story is too detailed.
Okay.
But they can't answer simple follow-up questions.
Interesting.
Or they avoid certain topics altogether.
Like they're trying to deflect.
Exactly. Emotional detachment.
Like their words don't match their feelings.
Right.
So a liar might talk about a sad event.
Yeah.
But show no real sadness.
Exactly.
King suggests using surprise.
Surprise.
To throw a liar off balance.
How do you do that?
Ask an unexpected question.
Oh, I see.
Something they haven't prepared for. They might slip up.
Reveal the truth.
It's like catching them off guard.
Yeah.
Are there other methods King talks about?
Increasing cognitive load.
What does that mean?
Make them think harder.
Okay.
Ask for specific details.
Uh-huh.
Change the order of events.
So they have to work harder to keep their stories straight.
Yeah.
And they're more likely to make a mistake.
Right.
This is fascinating.
It is.
But King says
the
goal isn't to expose someone.
Not to make them feel bad.
It's to understand why they're lying.
Their motivation.
Right.
To see their perspective.
I'm starting to see things differently already.
Like a whole new world is opening up.
I know.
We're paying attention to things.
What kinds of things?
He never noticed before.
King talks about thin slicing.
What's that?
It's making judgments based on limited information.
Like a first impression.
Exactly.
Are those reliable?
King says they can be.
Really?
But we need to be careful.
How so?
To avoid bias.
Right.
And we need to look for more information.
To confirm or challenge those first impressions.
Right.
So it's not just about going with your gut.
It's about being aware of that gut feeling.
Yeah.
And then digging deeper.
I like that.
Does King give examples of how to do that?
He says to look beyond body language.
Okay.
We can learn from people's possessions. Their home decor.
Like how they decorate their space?
Yeah.
Could tell us something about them.
It can.
And even their social media.
Social media is a goldmine.
I bet.
It can reveal a lot about someone's personality,
Their values.
their interests.
What they care about.
King calls it snooping ethically.
Snooping.
It's not about being creepy.
Okay.
It's about paying attention to the clues people leave behind.
Interesting.
He gives an example.
Okay.
A study found that people with elaborate Christmas decorations
Really?
tend to be more sociable.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
It's not just about the decorations themselves.
It's about what they reveal about the person.
Right.
Their need for connection.
Maybe.
Their desire to create a festive atmosphere.
Could be.
What other examples does he give?
He talks about how clothing choices can reflect personality.
What do you mean?
Someone who always wears a suit
Yeah.
might be more formal.
Or maybe they feel like they need to project an image of authority.
Right.
Someone who always wears athletic wear
Right.
might be very active.
Yeah.
Or maybe they just value comfort.
Interesting.
And then there's social media.
Oh, yeah.
Can't forget that.
It's a huge part of our lives these days.
What does King say about it?
He says people are actually quite honest online.
Really?
More than you might think.
I guess we forget people can see what we post.
It's like a public diary.
Kind of?
So even when we're trying to present a certain image,
Our true selves come through.
in the things we share,
The way we interact.
King mentions a study
Okay.
where people judged strangers' personalities.
Based on their social media.
Yes, they were surprisingly accurate
Wow.
in predicting the stranger's job performance.
Fascinating.
He also talks about using questions strategically.
Questions.
Yeah.
To get more information about someone.
To understand them better.
How does that work?
He suggests asking indirect questions,
What's that?
questions that seem casual.
But actually have a deeper purpose.
Exactly.
Give me an example.
Instead of asking,
Okay.
what are you most afraid of?
You could ask.
What reward would you work hardest for? And what punishment would you try hardest to avoid?
Interesting.
It gets to the same idea.
But in a less threatening way.
Right.
People are more likely to open up.
They might not even realize what they're revealing. Any other examples?
Yeah.
What animal best describes you?
Okay.
Or what would you save from a fire in your home?
Wow, those are good.
They make people think metaphorically.
And they can tell you a lot about their values.
This is amazing.
I know.
But with all this information,
Yeah.
how do we avoid misinterpreting things?
Or letting our own biases get in the way.
That's a good question.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
Practice is key. We need to observe more.
Ask questions.
Be open to new information.
And remember,
What's that?
reading people isn't about judging them.
Or manipulating them.
It's about understanding them.
Building connections.
Exactly.
This has been so insightful.
I'm glad.
I'm eager to hear what King says in the last chapter.
Let's move on to the conclusion.
Okay, we're back.
Ready for the final part.
Of our deep dive.
Into reading people.
With Patrick King as our guide.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
We've learned so much.
About how to understand people better.
By paying attention to those little details.
The things we often miss.
Like those micro-expressions and those pacifying behaviors.
And how our homes can reflect our personalities.
It's amazing how much information is out there.
If we just know how to look for it.
Exactly.
And the more we practice,
the better we get at it.
It's like a muscle.
That we need to exercise.
But it's not just about understanding other people.
There's more to it.
It's also about understanding ourselves.
Oh, I see.
As we become more aware of others' signals,
we become more aware of our own.
King calls this personal advertisement.
Interesting term.
It's the idea that we're constantly sending messages.
About ourselves.
Through our choices.
Our behaviors.
Even if we don't realize it.
Like on social media.
Right.
We try to create a certain image.
But our true selves still come through.
In the things we post.
The way we interact.
It's like our digital footprint.
Reveals who we really are.
And it goes beyond the online world.
Our physical spaces, too.
Our homes.
Our offices. They all reflect our personalities.
King gives some advice.
About how to use this to our advantage.
Like if we want to make a certain impression.
In a job interview.
On a date.
We can arrange our environment accordingly.
Pay attention to the details.
The lighting.
The colors.
Even the smells.
It's all part of the message we're sending.
What other takeaways does King offer?
He reminds us to use this knowledge ethically.
Not to manipulate people.
Or judge them.
It's about building understanding.
And connection.
That's what I love about this deep dive.
It's not just about techniques.
It's about a mindset.
Way of seeing the world.
And ourselves.
Well said.
I feel like I have a whole new set of tools now.
for navigating social situations
with more confidence
and awareness.
I'm excited to put it all into practice. And with that,
we've reached the end
of our deep dive
into Read People Like a Book.
But before we go,
let's recap
10 key takeaways to remember.
Sounds good.
Number 1,
confirmation bias.
we tend to see what we want to see.
Even if it's not really there.
Number 2,
the shadows.
those hidden parts of ourselves.
That we try to deny.
Number 3,
the inner child.
that part of us that never really grows up.
Especially when we're stressed.
Number 4,
the pleasure-pain principle.
we're all seeking pleasure.
And avoiding pain.
But our perceptions can be distorted.
Number 5, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Basic needs first.
Then higher needs.
Number 6,
micro-expressions.
those fleeting facial expressions.
that reveal our true emotions.
Number 7,
Pacifying behaviors.
those little self-soothing gestures.
that show we're not as calm as we seem.
Number 8,
Thin slicing.
making quick judgments.
Based on limited information.
But be careful of bias.
Number 9, personal advertisement.
We're always sending messages about ourselves.
Whether we realize it or not.
Number 10,
Use this knowledge ethically.
to understand people.
And to manipulate them.
So there you have it.
10 key takeaways.
From Read People Like a Book,
A fascinating exploration
of human behavior,
and the subtle signals we send.
to the world.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time,
Keep observing
keep questioning.
and keep connecting.